don't you be telling fibs. Get out of here. Now, let me get you in a little bit closer here so you can hear what I'm saying.
I'm Mikey.
Sweet pickle, sweet pickle, sweet pickle. And I'm Cris. Don't want to.
This is last time.
Do. And this is life as good as it gets. Hi guys. I am supposed to be doing 5,000 things right now. We just got back from Florida. And so I have new recipes that I've got to be cooking. I'm testing a few things. I have a blog post that I need to be doing for a sponsor. I need to make dinner. I have lots of stuff going on. But one of the things we talked about on the retreat was that we wanted to do more he said, she said, or she said with me and Aunt Lou. So what I did is I asked Aunt Lou while I went grocery shopping to get a few things. I asked her to tell a few stories about our childhood as she remembers it. And that I'm going to tell a few stories in how I remember them. And so we agreed upon 3 stories. I am going to tell you my side of these 3 stories, and we'll see how closely it connects to what Aunt Lou says happened. We always joke that she remembers way more details than I do. Maybe it's because I'm older. I don't know. I just have a really hard time remembering half the things. And then sometimes the things that I remember, she claims I'm totally not remembering right.
That's because of her bad memory.
Which I think that's true for hers too. But anyhow, so the first story I want to tell you about is what I call the Badlands story.
Now, on the list that she wrote for me, on what all I needed to do today, she put Badlands and underlined it 3 times. Well, the reason she did that is because she is wrong. It is not the Badlands. However, when I questioned her, oh no, by golly, it is the Badlands.
Okay, so I call it the Badlands story. It has always been in my mind the Badlands story. I find out tonight as we're preparing for this that I'm the only one in my family that thinks that this story happened in the Badlands in South Dakota.
Not the Badlands, by the way.
Our family always took trips out west when we were kids. We would travel all kinds of different states, and Aunt Lou and I would be either in the back of the car, or sometimes we would take a camper or whatever, but our parents would always take us on a big family vacation every summer. And we would go to all these amazing places. Well, one of my favorite places was always the Badlands. I always thought that they were beautiful. And I think my mom hopefully is going to send me some pictures of some of our family trips there, so I can share with you what I'm talking about. Now, mind you, I love the Badlands, but I always hated heights. And so one of the things that anyone who's familiar with the Badlands might know is that there are these, and I'm sorry, if you're from that area, I'm probably not describing them correctly. I'm describing them to you as I remember them as a child. I haven't been back since I was an adult, which we're hoping to remedy that sometime soon. So just bear with me here. They are these huge mounds. In South Dakota, I remember them to be pretty much without any kind of trees or greenery or anything like that. Just mounds of a desert-like, crackly mounds. Really, really high, really, really deep. And so one of the things I always remember about them is that we would go, and it was a national park, and we would go and we would read all about these and how the different colors on them were from different times whenever they had been underwater and all this kind of stuff, and just how these beautiful mounds of crackly desert-like land came to be, and what they look like, and how that many times people have hurt themselves because they don't always there's not a lot of guardrails or anything like that. So I love the Badlands. I, however, did not like heights, and that's probably going to be a theme in these childhood stories that you will hear often, because it was a very big fear of mine. Anyhow, so we would go to these these museums and places and see where people had fallen down these Badlands. The creases between, I'm horrible at describing this. I'm so sorry if this is a national or a state treasure to you, and I'm totally not telling it the way it was. But anyhow, we very much enjoyed them. I enjoyed seeing them. I did not enjoy going out on them or going around them. Some of them, it was clear you really should not, even mess with them. They're like miles deep. Like, you don't want to fall. Then there were other ones that families and people would climb around and climb on. And so, as I recall it, this story took place in this setting. My sister claims it did not, and my parents claim that it did not, or at least my dad says he doesn't think it did.
Well, then I call Mom and ask her for pictures, and she said, well, that wasn't in the Badlands. And I said, I know, right? So she says to Dad, hey, where was it that this happened? And Dad said, she said, Cris thinks it's in the Badlands. And Dad said, well, no, it wasn't in the Badlands. So, for once, 3 against 1, and I'm on the team of 3. Yay!
Charge the battery pack. Seriously, charge the battery pack. You know what that means? That means Aunt Lou talked way too long. But I'm not so sure. Well, first of all, I want to know where it happened if it didn't happen here.
It was not in the Badlands. It was somewhere out west. And
secondly, I think my dad might have been so mad about it that it might be affecting his memory because of what happened. So, I can't forget to keep cooking here. So with that said, you're going to have to know that where this happened is debatable, apparently, to the people who aren't remembering it correctly. Anyhow, I remember us being at the top of one of these more playful areas where families were climbing up and down some of the mounts.
There was this great big kind of like bluff, and I'm looking over it and I'm like, wow, that's kind of steep. That's crazy.
Now, it would be probably similar to going out in the backyard and hiking up a big hill, or as Mikey called them whenever, in southern Indiana, as Mikey would call them whenever he would visit southern Indiana. Those look like mountains, but hiking up a hill with, steep cliffs in places, or at least that's how I remember it. Anyhow, my father did not like the fact that I did not like heights.
Chrissy, on the other hand, is terrified of heights.
He always wanted me, he saw it as, he would probably tell this story differently too. I think he saw it as me holding myself back from enjoying things and having a good time. And so he would always push me, like if there was like a tower to go up, or if there was a bridge to go across, or something like that. He was always trying to get me to go and kind of beat my fear of heights. And he was unsuccessful. I am still very afraid of heights. I totally understand where he was coming from, but at the same time, it is a very, very real fear of mine. And there was no amount. There are very few things as a kid that I would ever defy my father on. And as it turns out, heights was definitely one of them. So we were at the top of this thing, and the road curved around and went through some more of the hills and mounds, and then popped out at the bottom of the mounds. So you could, from the top, see that the road curved around, and you could see that people were climbing up and down. So Dad's idea was that he should let me and Sarah, or Aunt Lou, out, and he wanted us to climb down while he drove the car around to the bottom.
I look at Cris and I was like, all right, let's go. And she looks at me like I'm crazy.
There was no way I was going down that mound. It wasn't going to happen. And to which, you know, one of the things I inherited from my father is his stubbornness, to which I'm sure he decided he was going to put his foot down and make me do it. And so he said no, and he let us out, me and Sarah at the top, me and Aunt Lou at the top, and told us that we were to meet him at the bottom of the mountain. Well, this is, of course, totally right up Aunt Lou's alley. She loved, like, she's a daredevil.
I've always been a daredevil. I like to climb on rocks. I like to I've even jumped off rocks, and
she's all about the adventure all the time, always.
I've always been adventurous. I like to do all kinds of crazy things, and I'm not really scared about, you know, if I'm gonna get hurt doing this or that. Like, I just go for it.
She is like the opposite of me when it comes to those kinds of things. I'm very much, you know, is this a good decision? Am I making good life choices here?
So I'm like, we should go down that. And Chrissy, of course, is no. Well, I keep on saying, we should go down that, we should go down that. I was right at that fun age where I love to pester my sister, like hardcore. Well, Dad stops the van and he says, do it.
And I decided as a young child that that was not a good life choice, despite what my parents, or particularly what my father, was saying.
Well, as always, I was teasing my big sister and said, oh, well, we should climb down this.
Now, you have to know, my dad had every confidence that if he told me to do something, I was going to do it, because that's the way our house was ran. There were no ifs, ands, or buts. There was no discussion. There was nothing. You do what Dad says. That's the way it was always. And that's the way we always were. He was very strict. We were very loved.
Mom and Dad, they've always been very protective of us.
But, you know, you knew if you were going to not do something Dad told you to do, there was going to be a strict punishment. And despite that fact, I decided for both Lou and I, because I was the older sibling, and she was not going to fall down that mountain and be on my head. So I decided for both of us that we were not going to go down the mound like my father had instructed.
Chrissy looks at me and says, no way. We are not going over that. Mom and Dad do not expect us to climb down that.
Instead, there was a perfectly safe road, which maybe might not have been so safe with, you know, cars driving on it and everything, but there was a perfectly safe road that wound around that mound and did not require us to go up and down what I felt to be a dangerous area. And so I told her that we were not going down the mound, and to her protest, I'm sure, because she, like I said, was a daredevil.
Even I'm looking over this thing going, wow, that's really steep. And I said, well, Dad just told us to go. She's like, no, he's up around that next curve. So I, being the innocent, wonderful little sister, I stayed with my big sister and I didn't go down over the bluff. I stayed with her.
We went down the road.
And we kept walking. And every time we came around another curve and Mom and Dad weren't there, we were like, wow, Dad's really playing this up. And yeah, no, Dad went to the bottom.
To which, by the time my father got to the bottom of the mound with his car and looks up to see his lovely daughters climbing down the mound, they aren't there. They aren't at the top. They aren't anywhere to be seen because they're traipsing down the road behind the car. And I'm sure as a parent now, if I think through what the fear that would strike my heart, thinking, oh my gosh, did they fall? Where are they? Did somebody take them? What happened? So eventually my dad decides to come back up the road.
So anyway, we keep going around and finally we see Mom and Dad, but they're not heading down, they're heading back up.
He's not very happy.
And they are livid.
Sorry about that, Dad.
Come to find out, Dad had actually went up and down that thing, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 times. Needless to say, we were both in major trouble.
We both get in very much trouble, and to this day, I'm not sure Aunt Lou has forgiven me.
I remember just being so confused
because she would have totally did what she was supposed to do, but I got us in a lot of trouble that day. I'm not sure there's a moral to that story.
Lesson learned for whenever Ryder and Isla are older and we go out west, I'll just climb up and down with them. Sounds good to me anyway.
I'm pretty sure I wouldn't make a different decision even today. I do believe Aunt Lou totally got in trouble that day because of me.
There you have it. There is the true story of the non-Badlands bluff that we didn't climb.
I'm telling you, that's where it happened. I will be telling other stories later on where she should have totally got in trouble. So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
She's the one that makes everything up.
Alrighty, guys. We'll chat with you later. Bye-bye.
See ya.